It began as most fragile things do, in silence, not the kind that comforts, but the kind that waits, between words left unsaid, between hearts that once beat together but now hesitate in rhythm. Lee Min-ho had always been a man of quiet gestures, of eyes that spoke where his voice faltered. Kim Go-eun, on the other hand, lived in the language of emotion, vivid, raw, unfiltered. Together, they found something that resembled balance. But love, she would later learn, is not always a story that balance can sustain. Fame had made them both storytellers, but in different ways. The world saw them through the lenses of cameras, through scripts that others wrote, through interviews rehearsed to sound sincere. Yet, behind every perfect smile, there were questions they never asked each other, perhaps because they were afraid of the answers, perhaps because silence was safer than truth. In the beginning, it was easy to believe in forever, the kind of forever that only two people who live under the spotlight can imagine, a forever hidden in small moments, like the brush of a hand between takes, or a smile exchanged when no one else was watching. Those moments where there's alone, and for a while, that was enough. Until it wasn't. There's a peculiar cruelty in loving someone the world also loves. It's a shared possession that never truly feels yours. She loved him in the spaces between the public and the private, in whispers, in late-night messages, in the ordinary comfort of his presence. But the world demanded more from him. More appearances, more charm, more smiles for strangers who would never know the weight behind his eyes. And she tried to understand, because she knew this was the price of who they were. But understanding doesn't quiet the ache of absence. It only teaches you to endure it. Lee Min-ho's love was steady, but distance is a way of softening even the strongest voices. He loved her, yes, but love that lives between flights, filming schedules, and public expectations becomes a fragile thing. It begins to exist in fragments. A message left unread, a postponed dinner, a call that ends too soon. The moments that once felt infinite now felt borrowed. And she, who once felt like home to him, began to feel like a place he visited less and less. There were no fights, not really, just a slow erosion of closeness, the kind that doesn't announce itself, the kind you only notice when it's already too late. The kind where one person starts saying, "I'm fine," more often than "I miss you." That's how the silence began to grow, quietly, invisibly, until it filled every space between them. He was always gentle with his words. That was the cruelest part. When he began to drift away, he did it softly. No harsh endings, no final arguments. Just quieter mornings, longer silences, shorter goodbyes. A love story fading like the last line of a poem. You can still see the ink, but the meaning is gone. Kim Go-eun began to notice the distance in small ways. In the way he no longer asked about her day. In the way his laughter felt rehearsed. In the way his eyes wandered to something, or perhaps someone far beyond her reach. She wanted to ask what changed, but the words got caught in her throat, because deep down she already knew. People don't stop loving overnight. They just stop showing up in the same way. And sometimes that's even harder to forgive. There was a night, quiet, almost weightless, when she understood it was ending. They sat together, the way they always did, sharing the kind of silence that used to mean comfort. But that night, it was different. The air between them felt thick with unspoken truth. He looked at her, and in that look was every apology he couldn't say aloud. She smiled, because that's what people do when they're trying to let someone go with grace. That smile was her silent goodbye, even if he thought he was the one leaving. The next morning, he didn't call, and she didn't expect him to. Love doesn't vanish with absence, but it does learn to survive without expectation. Days turned to weeks, and weeks to months. The world continued to pair their names in headlines, in fan theories, in stories that spoke of eternal chemistry. But only she knew that behind the facade of perfect love, there was a hollow quietness, the kind that follows when something beautiful dies softly. Lee Min-ho loved her in his own way, fiercely, but not forever. And perhaps that's what she had to learn, that sometimes love isn't meant to last. It's meant to teach. His silence taught her that even the loudest emotions can fade, and that sometimes closure doesn't come with words. It comes with acceptance. Acceptance that love, however real, cannot always survive the weight of two different worlds. Kim Go-eun began to find herself again in the spaces he left behind. She poured her ache into her craft, into characters who felt pain, into eyes that could still shine despite loss. People called it growth. She called it survival. And maybe that's what love is too, not just the ability to stay, but the strength to continue when staying becomes impossible. For Lee Min-ho, silence became his refuge. He never spoke of her in interviews, not because he didn't care, but because some loves are too sacred to share. Some goodbyes are too fragile to name. He kept her memory like a pressed flower, beautiful, preserved, untouchable. A reminder of a time when his heart beat louder than his fame. They would cross paths again years later, at an event, surrounded by flashing lights and the polite chaos of recognition. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and in that fleeting exchange, there was a quiet understanding. No bitterness, no longing, just the echo of what once was. A love that had done its job. A love that had been enough for who they were then, but not for who they had become. Love, she realized, isn't always about staying. Sometimes it's about knowing when to leave before it turns into something unrecognizable. Sometimes it's about remembering someone as they were, not as the person they became without you. That's what makes it beautiful. That's what makes it hurt. In the years that followed, she would still think of him, not with pain, but with gratitude. Because some people enter your life not to stay, but to show you how deeply you can feel. And when they leave, they take a part of you with them, but they also leave something behind. A quiet courage, a gentleness, a new way of seeing the world. For Lee Min-ho, the silence remained. He carried it like a promise, like an invisible thread that connected him to the woman who once taught him how to love beyond performance, beyond cameras, beyond himself. He would watch her from afar, her new roles, her laughter, her light, and smile quietly, proud of the person she had become. Maybe that was love, too, to love someone enough to let them live fully without you. Time softened the edges of their memories. What once burned with intensity now glowed with warmth. And though their story had ended, its echo remained. In every tender glance caught by the camera, in every fan who believed their chemistry was real, in every silent prayer whisper for what could have been. Kim Go-eun would one day look back and realize that she didn't lose him. She simply outgrew the version of herself that needed his love to feel whole. And that realization, that love was enough, but became her quiet redemption. And Lee Min-ho,